So much. Thank you.
So this season of Sleepy Hollow has been really fantastic. For me as a fan, I've watched it obviously from the beginning, and the introduction of both your characters have really changed the dynamic of the show. What's it been like coming onto a show that's already seasoned and coming as newcomers this season? Playing an iconic character too, Betsy Ross.
Iconic, and yet their version of her. So it's
Yeah.
I think everybody was. They all welcomed us. I mean, I'm sure we had similar experiences, even though we don't work together. I'm sort of in my own little pocket. I'm just with Tom. It's just Tom and I. Everyone was very kind, and it didn't feel like there was tension or like any kind of transition. But Tom and I, before we started filming, we spent a bit of time trying to work out the dynamic and figure out who Betsy and Crane were together with the little information we had from the writers. I think one of the things you come across in television is that you discover the character while the writers are giving you little bits at a time.
Exactly.
It's hard to predict what's
Yeah.
going to happen.
That's exactly one of the most interesting things about working in TV is that it's you discover more and more with each script. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes as an actor you have to prepare, well, not sometimes, but you have to prepare when you're, given a new character, so you do all this work, and then you read the script, you're like, oh, I went in a different direction with that, so let me, bring in that and make that adjustment. But it's always, I like the reveal. I like the excitement of, little by little, following those cookie crumbs to what ends up being hopefully this fully realized character, and that's really exciting for me. And I think coming into this show, it was already established, and they're already, this team is already working together. They already know what they each bring to the table, and this is my first big show. This is, and Sophie Foster, my character, was completely new to this world, so we kind of shared that experience, and so it was fun for me as I was discovering, where I fit in, me as the actor on the set. She was also discovering where she fits into this world that was completely new to her. So it was a really cool parallel for me.
During the first season, we watch Ichabod having a lot of uncomfortable moments with Abby not being like the women that he's used to back in the 18th century. And then we see you being exactly the same kind of woman that he's supposedly not used to, and I'm wondering if
you should definitely bring that up.
That was well. I'm wondering if that's something that you and Tom talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. How forward she was or is. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and
very
is there,
sassy,
like,
very
a
forward.
motivation, like, what is her backstory? Why is she different from the women that he is used to in his own time period?
I think the only honest way to answer that would be to say that that aspect of Betsy's personality was probably created as a way to sort of create entertainment and more of I think probably an interesting dynamic between her and Crane, because I would say that how forward she is and how excited she is by poking him is not what I would have expected Betsy to be. So I think they probably did that for entertainment's sake, and it does create something interesting. And he is fun to. Crane is that character. He's so uncomfortable in that world, in her, in her presence. So I think it gave us something to play with. But I definitely think that the question you're asking is valid, because that's not how I would have expected any of the women to be in his life. Maybe that's why he hasn't been able to forget her. Maybe that's why he keeps revisiting. I mean, this is the only part of this show, I think, that's had this sort of twistery where you continually revisit one part of the past.
maybe it's why he is drawn to Abby a little bit.
Sure,
'cause she's
possibly.
comfortable.
Yeah, maybe the
in a
only
weird
two
way.
women in his life that have behaved like that. But I do think that Tom and I have discussed from the beginning, after the first episode actually, that we enjoyed more. This has nothing to do with he and I as people or as actors, but just strictly for the characters. We enjoy being partners more than the chemistry, how I think sexual it can feel very quickly between men and women on screen. I think he and I discovered, and we encouraged actually, less of that and more of the, being partners in crime, because I think that also is a much more interesting take on a relationship. You have two people that, by all means should want nothing more than to be together, but they don't. Why? I think that's a more interesting dynamic.
With your character, with Sophie, she's mentioned several times that there's a paranormal type of history with her family. Are we going to explore any more of that throughout the rest of this season, or do you have any insight on what you think might have happened and why you're drawn to the supernatural world now? Like, you've welcomed it a little bit more than Danny has when he found out.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think that, she was so kind of blown away by this discovery of, this actually everything that she's studied and heard about being possible and real and close, and what that could mean for her life, and for the answers that have been haunting her, or the questions that have been haunting her, and not having the answers. But I think this season is more dedicated to Sophie. We see Sophie trying to get her footing, trying to say, okay, but I really am capable. Okay, you guys, I can do stuff, but how do I do it here? What do I do? I feel helpless, and so her trying to figure out her place as part of that team. And I think that definitely, I think definitely Sophie is getting closer to maybe. I'm trying to be careful and dance. I think we're gonna see her get closer to the things that have always been, haunting her and keeping her awake at night. I think, now that we know that she's part of the team and that we know, she's established. Okay, so what does this mean for her as a person then? And I think that's coming.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.